I had spent the last 6 months of my life troubleshooting a huge engineering project, and I should have been flying to San Diego to meet with the West Coast team. I hadn't slept in my bed in almost 3 weeks, and living out of a suitcase was taking its toll on my marriage. Then a miracle happened, and I solved all of our problems 2 weeks before the deadline. The client was so impressed that he handed me a check for $50,000, my early completion bonus, and told me to take a well-deserved vacation. They must have read my mind and handed me a first-class ticket home. It was the flight I had dreamed of. I decided to surprise my beautiful wife Linda and not call first. I was counting the minutes until she would be in my arms. I booked a limo to take me home from the airport. As eager as I was to get home, I asked him to make a few stops. First, a flower store where I bought 24 red roses on long stems. Next stop was a liquor store where I bought 2 bottles of the best champagne, a foam cooler, and an ice pack to chill the champagne for the homecoming celebration. The driver offered to take my luggage inside. Not wanting to spoil the surprise, I asked him to park a couple doors down and stash my stuff in the garage. I gave him a very good tip. As I walked up the stairs, I tore up the floral paper and arranged the roses so that they covered the peephole. I never used the front door and knew Linda wouldn't open it without checking to see who was there. All she would see were 24 of her favorite flowers. I rang the bell. Linda opened the door dressed to the hilt. "You're early!" She was excited. "How did you know I like red roses?" It took a moment for the remark to come to consciousness. "Ever since I brought you one on our first date." Without hesitation, I replied, setting the bouquet down. Her eyes got huge, and she shrieked when she saw me. It was not a good scream. All the color had left her face. I smelled fear in the air. This is bad, very bad, I thought. I dropped the roses. She didn't move. We both stood in silence, staring at each other. Linda looked like she'd seen a glimpse of hell. I'm sure I looked the same way. It was obvious what was going on. I don't know what kept me from grabbing her by the throat and choking her. I felt nauseous. Linda spoke first. Her voice shook with emotion and her mouth struggled to find the words. "I thought you were leaving for San Diego." It was at least a minute before I could answer. "Who were you expecting?" "No one," she stuttered. That lie exploded the reality of the situation for me. My wife was leaving our marriage. "You must think I'm a complete idiot." My voice filled the living room. "If you want to have any chance of getting out of this by staying married, you'll confess everything before your date arrives." Linda fainted and sank heavily to the floor. I stood motionless, looking at her prostrate body. Her skirt was pulled up at the waist, exposing her girlish charms. I turned around and threw up on the living room couch. Not more than a minute had passed when there was a knock on the door. I peeked through the crack and saw a smarmy homewrecker in a cheap sport coat. He knocked again, this time with more force. Before I opened the door, I pulled a gun from the cupboard. I checked it. It had 6 bullet cartridges in it. And the dumb son of a bitch actually walked into my house with a "I'm here to fuck your wife and there's nothing you can do to stop me" smirk. He made it to the foyer before he saw me. I slammed the door behind him. I have to hand it to him. He's a quick thinker. "Good afternoon, Mr. Harris," he stammered. "My name is Clemson, William Clemson. I'm with your homeowner's insurance company." He had the nerve to extend his hand, as if he thought I would greet him as a friend. No, I greeted him like Jack Ruby greeted Lee Harvey Oswald. I put my .38 in his belly and put a big hole in my wife's lover. He collapsed to the floor. His blood started staining the carpet. He looked terrified. For a second, maybe 2, I worried that I had shot an innocent man. Then Linda screamed, "You shot Bill! No shit like that! And I'm going to shoot you too!" My wife ran into the kitchen and grabbed a towel. She got down on her knees and started pressing. "Please call 911. You really don't understand, do you? Don't you remember what I did when I caught that brat who stole my lawnmower? You beat him half to death. And what makes you think I wouldn't kill a man who steals my wife?" Linda began indignantly. "You don't own me." I ignored her stupid comment. "So, asshole, are you married?" I slapped his face to get his attention. "Bill, his name is Bill," yelled Linda, as if it mattered. "So, asshole Bill, are you married?" When he didn't answer, I stepped on his toes. He screamed like a girl. I pointed the gun in his face. "I'm getting a divorce." His voice shook. "And what are the grounds?" When he didn't answer, I put my heel on his hand and started pressing. "I cheated on her!" he shouted. "Do you have children?" "2 girls." "And the woman you cheated with?" "She's getting a divorce, too." "And she has children?" "She has 2 girls, too." I looked at Linda. 3 marriages broke up because asshole Bill couldn't button his pants. She muttered something about something I didn't know. Other than on TV, I'd never seen a man bleed to death. I don't know why I remembered, but they always called it exsanguination. The color of his face was getting paler and paler. Yes, I'd say he was dying. That means 4 kids are going to grow up in single-parent families because of your boyfriend. So, asshole Bill, how many affairs did you have before your wife caught you? I tapped my foot on his arm. 3. No, 4. His breathing became labored. Linda dropped the towel. "You son of a bitch. You said I was the one. You said you loved me." She buried her face in her hands and began to sob. "Look at this piece of shit. He's dressed like a used car salesman, and you ruined our marriage to be another nick in his eye. So was it worth dying over him?" Asshole Bill started coughing up blood. I was tempted to put him out of his misery. He gestured me forward. He could barely speak. I thought he would beg for his life, but instead he blurted out, "Fuck you and your whore wife!" It took all my willpower not to end his suffering. Instead, I drew strength from them, knowing what I should do next. My whole being was consumed with hatred. Linda heard his words and, curled up in a ball on the floor, sobbed. It was almost 5 minutes before asshole Bill went where dead lovers go. I walked over to my wife. "Now it's your turn." I pointed the gun at her. She spoke, begging me to let her live. Funny thing is, she never once said she regretted ruining our marriage. No, she was too busy trying to get her death sentence commuted. "If I don't kill you, I'll go to prison and you'll be free to date every loser in town." No, I have an idea. You can call the police and we'll say he attacked me. You came home and saved me. You'd be a hero. And how many people know you slept with that piece of shit? Only Karen at the office. Karen, who you call the gossip queen. How long will it take her to tell the police that you 2 were lovers? Okay, then how about this? You can bury him in the woods, and while you're at it, I'll drive to the store and rent a carpet cleaner. As if I'd be stupid enough to let her go anywhere. I stroked the gun in my pocket. No, she was dead too. "Please, Ronnie, I screwed up big time, but I promise I'll never do it again." "Do you realize that you've never once apologized for betraying me and our marriage? Give me one good reason why I shouldn't kill you." Linda wiped her nose with the sleeve of her silk blouse. Then she put her arms around me and gave me one of her crooked smiles that she knew I wouldn't be able to resist. "Because I will always love you." I looked her straight in the eye and smiled back. The bullet flew out of the gun at about 1,000 feet per second. Linda was dead before she even felt anything. I picked up her body to keep it from collapsing to the floor. Her death was so sudden that she was still smiling. I'd like to think that the last thing she heard before she woke up in eternity were my words, "And I will always love you." I gently laid her down on the carpet and picked up the roses. I arranged them around what was left of her face. She looked like an angel. I spent the next couple hours sitting next to Linda and telling her about all the plans I'd made on the way home, a second honeymoon in Hawaii. Whatever she wanted, all the dreams I had, that we had, would never come true. I had a few more things to do, including writing a chronology of events for the police, so they'd know why I'd acted the way I did. I went upstairs and got a pair of panties out of Linda's dresser. I didn't want the police to see her undressed. Then I said a prayer and asked God to give me a break. When I couldn't think of any other reason to delay the inevitable, I lay down on the floor next to my wife. I squeezed her hand as tightly as I could and told her I was sorry. I kissed her goodbye and apologized. I didn't even feel the bullet pierce my brain. Epitaph. When your husband commits a double suicide, you don't get a lot of cards with the deepest condolences. No, most of the ones Marie Clemson received were pretty nasty. More than a few, she blamed herself for what had happened. Some sadistic bastard kept sending her copies of newspaper articles with, "It's your fault," scrawled in red marker. After a few days, she started throwing all the mail, unopened, into a large cardboard box. The landlord's 5-day eviction notice had been delivered personally by a sheriff's deputy. She had nowhere to go, and she was afraid he would come back and take her daughter away from her. Marie was about to throw the box in the trash can, but decided to see if there was anything inside other than bad news. Among them was an envelope with her name and address written in perfect cursive handwriting. Curious, she opened the envelope and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She almost collapsed in her chair when she opened it and saw that it was a money order for $50,000, payable to her name.